Okay, I think everybody's over here. So a quick introduction for those of you that don't know me. My name's Talmage Smedley. This is my son running the camera, Tanner Smedley. And we have a little project going that we call T's Doghouse. I don't know if you might be familiar with it, you might not. Hopefully over time everybody's familiar with it. But we have a great passion for the bird dogs, for all dogs really, but especially for the bird dogs. We really like the pointing dogs, and particularly I'm in love with the sport of field trialing, horseback field trialing, and all ages is the ultimate game for me. So that's a little bit of background on me. I started breeding my setters when I was 12, and so we're really close to 40 years. So I have dogs that I've owned parents for 9 and 10 generations now. So it's been a fun journey for a long time. And in that time, I've had some great influence from other trainers that are now in the Hall of Fame that I love dearly and appreciate all that they've done to help me out. And now I'm trying to take some of what I know and see if I can use that to help other people that have a passion for the bird dogs also. So this dog is Betty. You guys might be familiar with the saying, when in doubt, throttle out. You know, if you're getting stuck, the thing to do, well, she believes that when in doubt, enthusiasm out. So she's got a lot of enthusiasm, and you'll see it. She loves the game that we play out here. As I've raised these dogs, I got passionate about training the young dogs. So I would sell the older dogs and I would keep entire litters of dogs. And I just was fascinated with how broad the spectrum was of the dogs you could get in a litter. And when I started, it was immense. I could have one that would go on and win a field championship, and another one that really was trying to pose as a German Shepherd and needed to live in somebody's house and go on walks around the block. And so there was a lot of variance. As we've continued to breed, we don't see nearly that much variance. You know, now we feel like, man, every pup is gonna make it. But the pups can only make it if the people can help them there, right? That's the only place they have. They can look to nature for their information, and they look to the people for their information. So our ability to pass information to the dog is critical. I feel like throughout the years, we've had a lot of techniques of passing that information on that were a little rough, and it prevented many dogs from being able to really make it and succeed. So that's been another passion of mine, is how do you train every dog? You know, from the boldest, wildest, crazy dogs to the most timid, careful, cautious dogs, you know, and everywhere in between. And there's very few. I don't know how long it's been since I felt like I couldn't help a dog become a bird dog. We all know that some of them seem to be more brilliant at it than others. But feasible bird dogs, we've taken dogs that were so gun shy that if they saw the gun, they were back in the truck, right? They didn't even need to hear a sound or anything, and turned them into very serviceable gun dogs, dogs that had shut down and quit hunting at all. You know, there's just so much you can do if you have the ability to communicate. So our ability to communicate becomes really critical, and the tools and the ways we communicate are really important. So this dog, what we're trying to demonstrate today is what we want to teach a young dog before we take it to put it into wild birds. She's just barely turned a year old. We didn't do anything in wild birds last year. I have so many dogs that the little puppy walk down the road, you know, to see if we bump some quail when they're 4 months old isn't feasible. The numbers are, so the dogs stay with the pigeons and in the field, our training field and stuff, until the hunting season comes along where they're big enough to go and really take advantage of things. So she's just being introduced to the wild birds now. But we take them through what we call the first cycle at home. And that means that we want to be able to turn the dog loose, have her point birds, have a good strong recall on her, and to be able to shoot birds over her. And have her point them and let us flush and shoot the birds. So when they've completed that on pigeons, which is way easier than the wild birds, we call that the first cycle. But we also know that when we go into the wild birds, we're going to feel like everything came undone, right? Because the wild birds, I can't make the pigeon a wild bird. There's just, and especially locked in a metal box. It's just not the same game. And so we know when we go into wild birds that when we get into those scenarios, a lot of what we felt like we had could just go out the window. And if it's been taught on a check cord and it's been taught with commands and control, then chances are really high that the adrenaline is going to really send that out the window. So I ran my dogs a lot on wild birds with the mentality that I was going to let the wild birds teach the dog, that the first season was the dog's season. These are all sayings that I think people would be familiar with. I'm just going to take them out, let them run, whatever happens, happens, and I'm just going to let the dog do things. And it's a great program. I don't want this to come across that I'm putting anything down on that, because anybody that has the time and energy and ability to go put their dog into wild birds, I mean, wild birds are the king of the teachers. But what we've discovered is that there's things we can do with the pigeons that will help prepare the dog for scenarios they might run into out in the wild birds. So my focus isn't to get a dog to point a bird. It seems to happen with most every dog along the process before we go out. But that is not my focus in any way. But my focus is that when I get out into wild birds, I have the ability to communicate with my dog. That my dog's comfortable with the birds and in love with birds, number one, and I can help them fall in love with birds using pigeons. That they think I am the center of everything fun, so that they can go with me and we can have fun, and I'm not having to put any kind of pressure on them to make them come to me or to make them come be with me. Right? I really dislike those times, which I had so many of running all age dogs, when my dog got into a covey, went with the covey, hit another covey. Pretty soon my dog's a mile away, and the whole hunt turned into me hunting for my dog, and then trying to figure out how to overcome issues that my dog got into and habits my dog got into along the way. So I wanted a really strong recall. I wanted them familiar with the gun. I wanted them really familiar and hyped up and excited about birds. And then I wanted to be able to communicate with them around birds. But I didn't want to go through the woe breaking process. I didn't want anything to where I'm putting pressure on the dog to make it do something that I wanted it to do, right? Because I'd seen that take the hunt and the excitement out of the dogs. So studying the wild birds and how they were teaching the dog, I've tried to find ways to simulate those things with my pigeons, so when I get into the wild birds, I can jump the dog forward without causing any kind of negative reactions or feelings from the dog, without taking anything out of the dog in the situation. So I hope what you see here is, and we can talk after, we can talk in the shade, whatever. I'd love to answer questions. But I hope that what you see here, you can see how it simulates what you might see tomorrow doing your counts when you run into a young brood of sage grouse that or popcorn chicken, as we like to call them, where they're coming out one at a time, and maybe 2 or 3, and then a second later you find a couple more. And that's a great education time for dogs. You can get so much done in that moment. And that's what we've built for up until now, so that when we start running, we can take full advantage of those scenarios in August and in September, and we can just move forward with that. So I'll run her up through here, and we'll cross our fingers and hope things work like we thought they might. This is our first time in I've never set up like that. I mean, in the training field at home where they're familiar with things I've done, but I've never just come out in the middle of nowhere, especially where we've been running her out through the sagebrush, and then thought, we'll put this together and make it work in a little tiny area. So we'll see how this works out. So leading into it, a little of the setup, I've got a pigeon planted up here in this taller sage that kind of comes out because we didn't know where the wind was going to be coming from. And then I have one more planted farther up the hill that hopefully is in a position that she won't catch the scent or anything up in there, and we'll find the first bird first. Birds in here. Whoop. Whoop. Whoop! Whoop! Ho! Ho! Whoop! 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 Whoop!
We'll see if it keeps pulling her, maybe.
Whoop! Whoop! Come here. Here. Come here. Come here. So as you can see, there's a lot of enthusiasm. She's a very slow dog to point, so she only started pointing, I don't know, maybe 2 months ago. You can see there's a lot of desire to chase, and she would chase them clean out of the country. So to counter that, we teach the recall back to more birds. And if you can see, like down here when she got behind me and then caught up in the cars, I was just using my beep. But I'd nagged her with the beep until she came back in. But when she came back in, she got what she left for. She left because she wanted a bird. But when she came back to me, she got into more birds. And so I can create a recall that's strong that way. I will also use electrical stimulation because her thrill is so high, and I want to slowly tip, I want to tip the scale. She loves the birds on the ground. She points the birds on the ground. She loves the bird in the air also. And that can become a problem. In the end, the bird in the air is my bird. The bird on the ground is her bird. If it's on the ground and she points it, that's great. If I've killed it and it's on the ground and she retrieves it, that's great. But the bird in the air, eventually, that's the one that got away. And that's, you know, that's mine to shoot, but that's not hers to chase. But at this point, we don't want to take any enthusiasm out of it. But she's the ideal kind of dog that if I didn't have some ability to control that, she would be sailing out of the country, and she wants to run huge. And so that's, you know, for her type, that's why we run something like that, is because we can get a recall. I also have done nothing to teach her whoa, but I've made that whooping sound around birds a lot. So when she's coming in, she was very amped up, but when she's coming in and I'm whooping, and then I'm launching birds, then she's starting to learn that when I whoop and when I speak, that a bird's gonna fly. And if you think about what caused her to point in the first place, it was because she would smell the bird and then the bird would fly. And she'd smell the bird and the bird would fly. And over time, genetics started to kick in as the mind wore down and said, that's not working so good for me. Maybe I better try to sneak up. And then the points started to come out. So the bird, they smell the bird, then the bird flies. They smell the bird flies. Pretty soon they point the bird because when they smell the bird. So if I whoop and then the bird flies, and I whoop and the bird flies, and I whoop and the bird flies, pretty soon when I whoop, she's gonna point to keep the bird from flying. And so the staging she was doing and the listening to the whooping and those kind of things is none of it has been forced in any way. It's just simply that she knows when I make that sound, the next thing that's gonna happen is the bird's gonna fly. And that's why you see that intensity and the lowering, which will go away, you know, with more repetitions and more time, because the understanding will increase and it just won't be as exciting. So that's a little bit about, that's just a quick demonstration of what we do. And we start with pigeons on a pole. We do a lot of sight pointing work too, because I believe my dogs need to point them when they see them. They got to point them when they smell them. They got to point them when they hear them. They got to point them when they think they might know they're there, you know? And so I'm big on sight pointing also early on, and that's when you saw me holding the bird in my hand. You know, we're working off that. And eventually we have some that at 6 months old, you can do that, and then you can set that bird on the ground and flush it off the ground or whatever you want to do in there. She's harder that way because she's got so much drive. But anyway, so that's kind of the demonstration. Are there any questions with what?